Hi everyone, Internet TCS book reader here. Welcome to the annual top 10 best book that I read this year. I've read less book this year compared to last year because this year I've decided to release only 2 videos per year instead of 3 videos per year because after doing that for more than a year, I realized that it's a bit much. My channel did suffer from it though because my goal to be able to monetize my channel only got further and further after reducing my videos output, but it's better than not having a single second of downtime in between my 9 to 5 job. And thanks to that, I got to plan my streaming schedule, which if you had the time to, come hang out on weekends. That's usually when I stream because I do still want to keep my 9 to 5 job. Now I read through 178 books this year. As usual, it's a mix between fiction and non-fiction, which is why my list will also reflect that. It's about 50 books less than last year, but I do still have to be cutthroat with selecting the top 10. And I'll try to shout out other titles for those looking for something similar to my selection. Now let's actually start the list with the non-fiction. In number 10, it's Balanced Brain by Camilla North. It's hard to find a good book about health and mental health, not because it's a topic with a lot of words that are hard to understand, it's not physics, but it's because a lot of them are either unhelpful self-help that are nonsensical like Chowa, or it's something like Dr. K's book that had too specific of a target. So I'm glad to have read Balanced Brain this year because it's written by the neuroscience head researcher in University of Cambridge. It's sharp, it's focused, it's to the point, but it's still very easy to read even for some dumb like me who usually talk like a caveman outside of the scripted videos. If you're looking for a book to educate yourself on mental health, I highly recommend this. Then for number 9, let's go with 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I've read quite a lot of classics this year. I've read David Copperfield, which is so good, and I've gone through the Dune series that was written by Frank Herbert and not his son, which are also amazing. Then I finally finished all the Jane Austen books that I'll ever read in my lifetime, and while they're all really good in their own genre, the one that stick out the most for me is Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. There's just something so charming about the story. It's the only story that I read this year that had a timeless feel to it. And by that, I don't mean that the story stood the test of time in the way people usually describe classic. I mean the time that passed in the story feels like it can take between a few weeks and 100 of years. I can't really find any other words to describe it. Even Dune, where about 5,000 years passed in the story, didn't give that same feeling as reading 100 Years of Solitude. I think this might be the most unique fiction that I've read this year or ever, period. It's a classic that I still have not read anything quite like it. If you somehow miss it, I really recommend this book even if it's just based on how unique it is. And with that, let's go to number 8, Don't Fall by Inyo Asano. It's a manga from the author of the legendary Goodnight Punpun, which I keep saying that I'll make a video about but kept delaying it. This is a much more grounded and much shorter story compared to literature because it is a one-volume manga. But if you want to read a story where the main character is an arrogant, narcissistic scumbag with no redeemable quality to him, he is a scum and is written in a way that is unmistakable that he is a scum. But the story did not suffer just because he is a scum. The director and writer of Joker 2 honestly can take a note or two about how to write an absolute trash of a person without sacrificing the quality of the story by reading this. If you want to read a study of evil in a scumbag, I cannot recommend this enough. Now let's go to number 7. Fred Leonard by Craig Whitlock. This is an investigative journalism work which actually had a lot of good books, but it remains the most underrated non-fiction genre because a lot of people prefer their opinion to be based on social media posts, I guess. Not everything on the genre is good. There is trash like Patty McCracken's The Angel Maker, where the author is so fatphobic that the very serious murder topic accidentally become a bit comedic. But other than that, a lot of them, like Annie Jacobson's Nuclear War that the director of Dune will make a movie, is great. The Waker that Martin Scorsese will make a movie about is also really good. But Fat Leonard, which is about the Malaysian who scammed the US Navy, just stands out so much. Not just because it's a crazy true story, everything as I've mentioned are all crazy true story after all, it's because of how well written it is, which made it such an amazing experience to go through. If that sounds interesting to you, give it a go. With that said, let's go to number 6, Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I'm not much of a romance guy, so romance had to be really well written or I'll give it a low score like Keisuke Oyama's Love's Like a Failing Petals. But despite not really my genre of choice, so much of it is so well written that I keep coming back to the genre every year. Just this year alone, I had Finger Speed by Sarah Waters, Blue Sister by Coco Mellors, Hello Beautiful by Anna Napolitano, and Intermezzo by Solly Ronnie, which are all so good. But the one that is definitely going to be rent-free the longest for me is Olivia Blake Alone with You in the Ether. It's a simple grounded story about meeting the right people for you, but it's so well written with a lot of very quotable moments and phrases that reading it feels like going through your favorite songs. That's why this is my top recommendation for romance. Now with that said, let's start the top 5 with another non-fiction. It's a Kim Jong-il production by Paul Fisher. This is another investigative journalism and an old one at that. It's from 2015, and this one is a very lucky find for me. I got this in a second-hand bookstore not knowing anything about the book, and I'm glad that I took it and read it because it's one of the best journalistic non-fiction that I read this year. It goes through the life of the director, the actress, and the dictator, and as a result, we got to also see the history of North and South Korea from period to period. It's also written in such a way that you don't have to worry that it might make you feel like you're going through history class lesson. It feels more like you were reading this epic history that involves true story about when Kim Jong-il kidnapped two movie industry biggest figure. This is also because the Korean fever, so maybe you somehow miss it. I don't know where to get the book since even I found this one in a second-hand bookstore, but if you found it, take it, because unfortunately no other documentary about this event is as good as this book. The life of the Korean actress going through the Korean War, getting cheated by his director of her husband, and then getting kidnapped by Kim Jong-il and survive alone is worth a read. Now let's head to number 4, The Promise by Damon Galgut. This is a literary fiction which also involves other categories. Some of the romance titles I mentioned above can even go to these categories. Other than those, All the Lovers in the Night by Miko Kawakami, Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck, and Prophet Song by Pauline are all really solid titles. But my pick for the top 10 is definitely Damon Galgut's The Promise. There is a good reason why this won the Booker Prize in 2021. It's a story consisted of 4 stories that span 4 decades in a family in Africa, with each story starting with a death in the family. That premise alone is already so good, and I'm happy to say that the execution is also really good. It goes through the history of apartheid there and the fallout from an unfulfilled promise of the family that was made during the apartheid. If that catches your interest, go read the book and hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I do. And with that, we're going to the top 3 territory, starting with Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing and Song. As someone who read book, no big surprise here. There's rarely a story that really captures what it feels like to be attached to a fiction and its character. But somehow the husband-wife duo Sing and Song managed to do that in an action fantasy. Writing-wise, I think this is one of the most flawed writing in the list because of the limitation of the genre that makes it easy for the story to drag on for far too long with a lot of cliché trope here and there. Omniscient Reader Viewpoint definitely have all those flaws, but there are so much highs compared to the lows that made it such an easy story to love. That's why I wanted to start my top 3 with this manhwa. If you've ever attached to a fictional character in your life, whether it's Fleabag from Fleabag, Goku from Dragon Ball, Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender, anyone from Undertale, or just anyone from any other fiction, you definitely have to try reading Omniscient Reader Viewpoint. Now let's move to number 2 with Berserk by Kentaro Miura. This one is a no-brainer. I didn't even have to think twice about putting Berserk in the top 10 spot of the books that I've read this year. The book can be rough, especially at the start where Miura was still trying to figure out the kind of story he wanted to write. He even had to put a long-ass flashback just to flesh out the world and the characters. That's how flawed the story of the series was. But I'm glad that he did because Berserk is all the better for it. There's not a lot of dark fantasy and there's even less that have a good storytelling because it's easy to have the story become edgy just for the sake of being edgy in dark fantasy. A lot of them give the same second-hand embarrassment as a billionaire going dark manga cringe in their edginess. But Berserk stood out among all of them with the way Miura gave weight to the characters and their dynamic. Every rare moment where the characters get to breathe and show how much their relation and them as character have progressed feels like a precious gem that Miura handed to the reader in between each suffering that they go through. It's because of those moments that I always believe that Guts and his party will make it. No matter what, this character will make it. Kentaro Miura might have passed, but those believe that in the end it will all still be okay, still stay strong. If that's not good character writing, I don't know what is. That's why Berserk in this top 2 spot, and that's why you guys should still give it a chance. With all that said, let's go to number 1 with Night of Power by Robert Fish. The top spot for this year is a non-fiction and another investigative journalism, which I honestly didn't see it coming because usually this spot is for fiction. I've read a ton of books this year about Palestine, from 100 years of war in Palestine that trace the long history of the war that started before the one-sided Balfour Declaration from the Great Britain that kickstarted the suffering of the Palestinians. Life of Abed Salamat that show us Palestinian life at North Bank on the outskirts of Israel that has only gotten worse since the time I finished reading the book. And I've also read Freedom is a Constant Struggle from Angela Davis that is talking about the interconnectedness of injustice and the necessity to struggle as a collective instead of individuals to get the justice that we all seek. These are all great books, that's why I give them a 5 and highly recommend them, but something about Night of Power which goes through a lot of Western interference in Middle East, not just in Palestine, but also its surrounding. It's such a widely educational read to go through. The author Robert Fish has spent his life going through those history, going through one war-torn country to another, and seeing traces of Western interference in all of them. And then top it off with how this is a posthumous work that the author worked until the end of his life, made it into a book that encapsulates someone's life work that also shows you that what Palestine is going through is a generational struggle that we will need to keep fighting without losing hope that it will one day be resolved and they will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And that's my top 10 list of this year. Thank you all for giving my channel a chance at all. Videos about books are not the most popular. I can especially see that compared to the few hours of my game streaming. So I do really appreciate everyone that gave my videos a chance at all. Hopefully everyone had a good year in 2025. I somehow managed to survive the burst from my own 9-to-5 job where the CEO and the other C-level executive are on a rampage to cut people off so their pay can stay in the millions of dollars. So hopefully I can cling on to my job for a few more years so I can still continue making these videos for a while. And hopefully you can find something to read from my list. Cheers to another year of reading. That's about it. See ya.